Hello, welcome to the West Ham Way YouTube. Myself, Mark Carlaw. Today I'm joined by football journalist, also head of written content for 90 Min, and most importantly, fellow West Ham fan, Toby Cudworth. Toby, how are we doing, mate? You okay?
I'm very well, mate. It's we were just talking before we started the recording. It's not 40 million degrees anymore, so we're a little more comfortable. Still a little bit sweaty, but no, generally good, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been all right, isn't it? I was going to say, not only about the temperature, but summer. I mean, not only is it uncomfortable, but yourself involved in the journalist world and football, the transfer window. Is it a busy time for you, I imagine?
Always a busy time. It feels like this summer is particularly busy for some reason. I don't think I've ever seen as much business done as early as what's been done in the window so far. And every year you get one or two transfer sagas or stories that don't go away that kind of rumble on for a couple of months. I think we've had like 7, 8, 9 of those already this summer. There's still some ongoing. We'll get to Jesse Lingard, I'm sure, but obviously De Jong being another one for United. Plenty of those that are just rumbling on. And in general, it feels like the transfer market is a hell of a lot more active than it's been in previous years, but still plenty more business to do, I think, as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, obviously we'll talk a lot about West Ham, of course. But yeah, you're right. I think there's a lot of deals going on. It really feels like, I don't know whether it's just because we're at the sort of top end of the table a little bit at the moment, the last couple of years, but it feels that there's a lot of competition and that everyone's really trying to strengthen. And it just feels like, if you're not careful, you can be left behind quite easily. I think it's a really important window, not just for West Ham, but for a lot of clubs, I think.
Yeah,
so,
I think there's expectation, isn't there? Not just for West Ham, but for the likes of Leicester, for Newcastle, even for Wolves to an extent. The teams that have been in and around the top 10 know they've got to do similar levels of business to us if they want to keep pushing on themselves. So, yeah, it feels like there's far more activity across the board. And even, the likes of Nottingham Forest, they've already signed 9 players, which is pretty unheard of for a newly promoted team. And I don't think they're stopping there. They've probably got another 2 or 3 coming in as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they've got a big link with Lingard, as we know. But before we go on to the transfers and what's going on at the moment, I was going to speak to you. Obviously, you're a West Ham fan. Can you take me back to where this all started then for you, the club? And is this from your early days?
Yeah. So I'm not a local lad. So I'm actually born and raised in Reading, but my dad was born in Burnham, which is near Slough, back in the late 50s, and then during the 60s, he used to commute up on the train to go to London, where you could kind of take your pick of where you wanted to go and watch your football. So he used to go and watch Chelsea a lot. He used to go and watch Fulham a lot. And then he went over to West Ham, and it was the days where you could just rock up and pay peanuts to be able to get in and watch a game. Yeah. West Ham were the one club that he kind of took to. His dad wasn't really into football too much, so it was kind of a love and a passion that he developed himself. And then he kept on going throughout the 70s and 80s, and then I popped along in the late 80s, and he started taking me to pre-season friendlies kind of in the early 90s. But we ramped it up in terms of going to Upton Park. I think I went to my first Premier League game in March 1996. It was West Ham 4, Man City 2. Julian Dix scored a screamer from outside the box.
Really?
Yard rocket in the top corner, yeah. Danny, do you remember Danny?
Yeah, I do, yeah. The beautiful, beautiful Danny.
Absolutely, beautiful man. I saw one of his one and only goals for us. It might have been his only goal, actually. But yeah, obviously that captivated me, and I've been in love with the club for, the best part of 25 years. And I still go as regularly as I can. It's probably more in a work capacity now rather than as a fan. But still love it as much as I ever did.
It's great. I mean, as well, you kind of live in the dream, aren't you? I mean, I know obviously we don't see the real work that goes on behind the scenes, and obviously it is tough, but to be involved in the football world as a job, it must be quite a dream for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've actually been on quite an interesting journey. So when I left university in 2009, I did a broadcast journalism degree, and I'd always wanted to be a sports journalist. I used to sit at home with pens and pencils trying to replicate CFAX on a bit of paper. I'd write in blue pens or whatever, and I'd play out little matches on Subbuteo, and I'd be writing the scores down. And I always had a dream of either being a sports reporter, sports commentator, something along those lines. And football was always my number one sport, even though I love cricket, I love golf, I love tennis. Basically put me in front of any sport and I'm happy. Football was the one I wanted to do. Went to uni and did a broadcast journalism degree. But back in 2009, which sounds alien to say, digital media still wasn't really much of a thing. Twitter wasn't around. the way that we consume news was all kind of still through newspapers and whatnot. And it's bloody competitive. So I actually left uni and didn't pursue what I really wanted to do just because I thought I'm not going to be able to get into it. And actually spent close to a decade doing retail finance management, which was absolutely no fun whatsoever. But at the end of 2017, I just packed it in, decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And I gave myself sort of 12, 18 months to try and make my way into journalism. And then I decided if that didn't work out, then I would go back to the career that I knew. And, you know, I'd probably be able to get a pay bump having left and gone back. That's the way it generally tends to work.
Absolutely.
But I'm very fortunate that things have worked out well for me. And I'm now in a position where I get to, you know, watch football and write about football for a living, which I think for most boys and girls is a dream.
Yeah, I can't deny. I mean, I'm very jealous this side of the camera, I must admit. But no, that's brilliant, mate. And you know, you do a very good job. Obviously, I see your work you do for 90 Min, and obviously, and also the fact you're head of content. I mean, what does that involve exactly? Head of content. It sounds like you got your fingers a lot of pies in terms of.
Yeah, so I'm not so involved in the actual day-to-day writing now. So the past 2 or 3 years, I've been in a writing and editing capacity. So writing transfer stories. Match previews, all sorts of content, but I also had editing responsibilities as well. So pushing out the content on the website, plugging on social, etc., etc. But now at the start of the year, I was promoted to a new role. So I ultimately have accountability for everything that goes on 90 Min's UK edition of the website. We're one of the few sites that operates in a dozen languages around the world. I look after specifically UK. And it's mainly about content strategy. It's about forward planning. I know me and you have communicated a little bit off camera, and a lot of the work I've been doing this year is around the women's Euros, already looking forward to the World Cup and planning for future years as well. So it's kind of taken me out of the present, so to speak. And I'm more of a long-term strategist now, but there's still the West Ham connection. There's still a busy transfer window going on, and there's still things that I want to be involved in hands-on. So I try and divvy my role up to allow me time to still stay close to what's going on. But yeah, in terms of a leadership capacity, it means that I'm not so involved in the day-to-day stuff now.
No, that's brilliant, mate. It's fantastic. You've done very well, and it's very impressive the work you do. What to say then? Back to West Ham then. I mean, 2 years now, 2 seasons we've had back to back. They've been very well. Let's say very positive seasons. Firstly, what do you put that down to? Do you put that down to a collective effort, or do you think it really is down to the management and his team, and mainly David Moyes?
I think the majority of the credit has got to go to David Moyes. He obviously came in when we were at a really low ebb under Manuel Pellegrini. Things had started off quite brightly under him, and I know I got sucked in the first 2 or 3 months of Pellegrini's reign. I thought, wow, we're actually watching something develop here in terms of playing style. But we never really lost that fragility that we've always had of being able to throw away a result. You know, we'd be 1 up with 10 minutes to go. You'd always have that nervous anxiety that we were not going to concede just one. We were probably going to go on and lose a game.
Yes.
And Moyes come in. I was of the mind that he should never have gone in the first place. I thought he did a great job to keep us up. Yeah. In that season that we were struggling, he got the best out of Manuel Lanzini and Marko Arnautovic. And I can understand why we wanted to maybe bring in Pellegrini as a name, but in terms of culture and the fit and what West Ham needed, it was somebody who is a bit of a hard taskmaster. And I think that's what David Moyes is. He demands the highest standards from his players. And when he came back in for that second spell, I think we saw during those few months before we went into COVID lockdown, the team were playing generally a lot brighter from minute one. We stuffed Bournemouth 4-0, didn't we, in Moyes' first game back?
We did, yeah.
And even though we suffered, I think the last game before lockdown was away at Arsenal. I was there. We lost 1-0 to that Lacazette goal that was a bit of a fluke goal. But we should have got a point in that game. We could have won that game. And in that game, I saw a lot of fire and a lot of passion and a lot of belief in that team that they kind of knew what they were doing. They knew what their roles and responsibilities were. Yeah. And I did feel like we were on a path to being a little bit more sturdy and hard to beat. Obviously, fast forward 2 years, we've maintained being difficult to beat, but we've added that bit of quality as well. And I kind of look at us now and think we've just got a group of a collected group of players rather than a group of individuals, which is in years gone by what you could always accuse of having was two or three people who were maybe in it for themselves, were using West Ham as a bit of a stepping stone. There was never quite a squad of players where you looked at it and thought they all get on, they all gel, they're all playing for the shirt. I feel like we're in that position now, and if we bring in Jesse Lingard, will that still be the same notion? I don't know. But I feel overwhelmingly positive. It's been the most consistent 2-year period since I've obviously been a supporter. I don't think we've had it this good for such a long period of time. So I want to enjoy it first and foremost. Another season in Europe where I think we've got a good opportunity and a good chance in the Conference League to impress. But we need to still maintain and remember all of the things that Moyes has instilled in us and just make sure that we are hard to beat. That's the one thing I would love us to be for the years to come more than anything else, is just difficult to beat and resilient.
Yeah, I agree. I think West Ham, we seem to have turned the page. You're right, we're very hard to beat. And I don't think there's any team in this league that genuinely looks forward to playing West Ham, home or away now. And I kind of, when you do say, you're right, when you talk about David Moyes, I mean, when you think of Moyes as Everton, and that's how I used to remember Everton being, those teams, you just never look forward to playing them. Even at home, when we were playing well, you thought, Everton, this is going to be a really hard, you had to be at your very best to get a result. And I think that's where we are now. And as you say, if we can just maintain that, I think, these could be some really special years. In terms of my next question, then, it was going to be really based around where you see West Ham going now. I mean, do you think we've hit a ceiling? Do you think this is the best we can get? Or do you think, no, West Ham can go further? This club's got more, there's more to go here.
I think we can go further, but I think we need to temper our ambitions. I know the feeling among the majority of fans on social media, and that's not a reflection of the core fan base. I think we know social media blows things completely out of proportion, is that we need to step up to the next level now. Otherwise, we never will. But it takes years to be able to financially compete with the likes of Spurs, Arsenal. Just look at the revenue they've got. They're always going to be able to improve their squads, and they are doing so this summer. We're on a journey, and 2 years isn't going to establish us as one of the big six. It needs to be another 3-4 seasons, dare I say, finishing in the top 8. If we could achieve a top 8 finish for 4 or 5 years in a row, maybe then we could have a look and think, okay, we're now established as being in this. This is the core part of the table. We're always knocking on this door. Players will look at coming to West Ham a bit differently because they will see a bit of history and a bit of longevity in the project rather than a short-term feel-good factor. Which, in years gone by, we've had one good season where we come 7th, and then the next year we'll come 15th, and we're kind of back to square one. We've got money to spend, and I think we may see a change in emphasis when Daniel Kretinsky takes charge of the club, once Gold and Sullivan finally do depart, whenever that may be. We may see a changing of the guard somewhat in terms of our strategy and our approach, but I don't think it's going to be radical. We need to continue building, continue doing what we're doing for at least the next 2 or 3 years, and ensure that we don't waste the progress that we've made. I think that would be the biggest shame of all for the last 2 seasons, to then be for nothing. If we slip back into the bottom half. So, slow and steady wins the race. I know it doesn't appeal to everybody, and we want immediate success. That's what everybody wants. But I would far rather be supporting a club who are continually trending upwards in the right direction rather than hitting a ceiling after just a couple of years.
Well, dare I say it, I hate to use their name, but I mean, you've got to look at Spurs sometimes, look at the model, how they've done it. I mean, when you go back to the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, when I was at school, West Ham were always above Tottenham, really. Majority of the time, we always considered the better side and always just seemed to be a little bit, had a bit more muscle about us. And obviously then the years happened, we got relegated, and I looked at it in pain, really. I think that's what frustrated West Ham fans so much, is that you watch Tottenham just sort of progressively growing and growing and growing. And now, let's be honest, they're a big six club, and they're never really going to be away from that. You can't really ever see Tottenham falling away. Just like you just said, I mean, the financial muscle they've got now, they're always going to be able to improve, and not improve slightly. They can improve greatly. Put some really top quality players in. I think you're right. I think we just need to have that bit of patience and think, well, look, if we keep going the way we are, we could be a big, you know, there could be the big 6, or big 7, or the big 8 clubs, and eventually we're in it every year. And I think you're right.
But what we have to remember as well is that there are the clubs who think they're in a similar position to us. So the first one to look at, obviously, is Newcastle, now the world's richest club. They're only going to go in one direction, and they probably will be on a faster trajectory to the top 6, to the top 4 than any other club, because they've got the financial muscle to do so. But you look at other clubs in the league, I would say Leicester probably harbour similar ambitions to us. They've been in and around the top 6 for that 4 or 5 year period that I spoke of. So they still think that they're, you know, if you speak to their supporters, they probably think they're a better team than us. And, you know, you could argue on their day, they're as good as us for sure. Wolves aren't quite there yet, but they've got aspirations of being a consistent top 10 team. And Aston Villa are owned by billionaires. It just depends how much money they're willing to put into their pocket, how much they're willing to delve into their pockets to spend.
Yes.
And whether or not Steven Gerrard's the man to lead them forward. We're not the only ones with these ambitions to break into the top 6. And that's another thing to be mindful of. It's fiercely competitive. It's not just us wanting to do this. It's 4 or 5 teams vying for the same place.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the next season, you know, coming up. I mean, people talk about the top 4 chase. Well, arguably, 3 of those spaces are already taken. Man City, Liverpool, and Chelsea realistically are probably going to be in those top 4. So that only leaves one more spot. You've then got Arsenal are going to be, you know, chasing that other spot. Tottenham, and then we come along. You know, so you're right. It's massively competitive. So I think you're right. I think for me, I think it's just like you hit the nail on the head. We just want to keep that consistency, the top half finish in the top 8, be around those European places, I think, and just keep you know, sticking in there. You know, we don't want to drop down to, you know, fall away as it all goes to waste. Being then in the media world, in terms of the summer transfer windows, obviously being a very busy time, can you give us some insight about what that is like, being, you know, going to work every day, and, you know, how, what your day-to-day runnings are like, and what, you know, what actually happens behind the scenes? Yeah,
so in terms of the transfer window and how stories sort of come to us, they can come through various channels. So we've spoken before that 90 Min as a brand, we work very closely with a guy called Graham Bailey, who is extremely well connected. He's got 20 to 25 years experience in the industry. He's worked for Sky, and he's got a huge contact book, and that varies between people at clubs, player agents, and intermediaries. And more in the modern world, more people are involved in transfer dealings. So intermediaries is a word that we probably hear quite a lot now. They're not directly affiliated with a player or with the club, but they're brought in to perhaps facilitate a deal. And actually, they're often the main source of information now. Whenever you hear a leak of a story or a rumor of a transfer that might be coming up, it's an intermediary that's playing a role in that transfer that may be the first one to reach out and say, hey, look, this is on the cards. And then it's our job to kind of validate that information and to do a bit of ringing around with the contacts that we've got to see whether or not there's any substance to that story. There is a huge clamour among many to be first. Being first isn't always a good thing. I think being true and accurate is what you're always looking to do.
Absolutely.
You're never completely right about absolutely everything. It's impossible to be so. And sometimes stories are rubbish. Sometimes stories are played down when there are elements of truth to it. But things change very, very quickly in terms of transfer targets, in terms of a deal might be on. 4 hours later, the deal is off. 4 hours later, the deal is back on. It can change that quickly. Yeah. And I guess the example we can look at now for the past couple of weeks is Jesse Lingard. I hate having to bring him up every 5 minutes. We've only been talking for less than 20 minutes.
I think you tweeted about him a few times as well, maybe.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
That is a great example of a deal swaying one way or another. And at the time, the information that we've got then is accurate to the state of play. But things change. Other people get involved. Demands change. He in particular has had interest from clubs in MLS and Saudi Arabia, and that kind of moves the ballpark in terms of negotiation. So when you think you're close to a deal, like West Ham have thought they were at one point, they probably would have got that deal done had other people then not got involved. But unfortunately, that happens. we're often apprised of changes of information. I know I speak to X sometimes about deals that are ongoing, and you don't report on every single thing that happens as well, because by the time you've reported one thing, 2 hours later, it could have moved on. So sometimes you sit on the information you've got, you validate it, and then you come forward with the story. But as I said at the start of the chat we're having, this particular transfer window seems a lot busier than any that I've been involved in. And I've only been doing this as a career, like I said, for 5 years all in. In terms of being close to transfers, it's ramped up significantly over the last 12 to 18 months. But I think this is the way that the transfer window is going now, purely because I feel like the power is actually leaving the clubs and it's going more towards the players, more towards the agents. Because they're looking to prosper and get the best possible deals for their clients. And plenty of players are running down their contracts. That's the other thing that we can kind of look at this transfer window. And if you look at next summer, 2023, the high profile caliber of players who are out of contract, never seen anything like this before. But it's just a change of dynamic, and it's a change of how the transfer market is working.
It's a shame as well, because, you look at this Lingard scenario and you say, you're right. I mean, the power that he seems to hold in this whole scenario is quite remarkable. I was going to ask you a little bit more about Lingard later, but I think as we're on the subject, we'll talk about it now. So the update we've got from our end is that X has provided an update this evening in that Lingard still wants to come to West Ham as his preference, but we're simply not going to match the money that he wants. I think that's because Nottingham Forest have offered far greater wages. What's your understanding of the situation at the moment, and what's your general belief where this is going to end up? Can you really see where it's going, or is it a big question mark?
Similar information in terms of what Lingard himself wants. We've long believed that coming back to West Ham is what he's wanted. Yes, there was interest from MLS, and DC United were mentioned at one point. After Rooney's appointment, I don't think there was anything major in that, and I don't think Lingard feels now is the right time to go there. He still feels like he's good enough to break into the England squad for the World Cup. That's been well documented in many, many outlets. I know X has mentioned it. He's 29. It's fiercely competitive to get into that England squad, and he knows that he's got to be a first team regular at a high level of football to be able to force his way back in. And no disrespect to MLS or to Saudi Arabia, as much money as was on the table for him or could be on the table for him, he's always wanted to stay in the Premier League. And coming to West Ham has always been his preference because of the loan spell. He did enjoy himself. Obviously did work very well for us. He knows that the fans previously loved him. I'm not sure that's the feeling so much now, given what's gone on. But it's not just about what he wants. He's got other people looking out for his interests. His brother and his dad were involved in negotiations. Other members of his family who perhaps want to steer the conversation a slightly different way. And it's kind of being presented that he's willing to sell himself to the highest bidder. Now, I don't think that's Lingard's position personally. I think his preference would be to come to West Ham. But as you've said there, we're not going to meet the demands of what his dad and what his brother and what his representatives have been asking for. 180,000 a week is extortionate in terms of wages. And if Nottingham Forest want to pay that, and our information is that they are prepared to do it, from my perspective, good luck to them. It doesn't make sense for West Ham to break their wage structure for Lingard, because it would set a dangerous precedent when we're coming to contract negotiations for Jarrod Bowen, if we want to talk to Declan again about a new deal. Thomas Souček. There's so many players that we need to reward in-house, and as soon as we get to a certain level in terms of wages, other players in that squad who have helped deliver the success that we've already had would quite rightly feel that there's some kind of parity that would be needed. And I think that's been West Ham's stance all along. They've had a number in mind of what they would pay Lingard. And we've always thought it's around 120, 130 that they would go to. That wouldn't make him the highest paid player at the club when you include bonuses. It would make him one of the highest paid. But 180 would make him streets ahead of anybody else. And My feeling now is that he will go to Nottingham Forest as we speak. In 12 hours' time, we might have new information that something's changed. But that's my gut feeling right now, is that the Forest deal is looking more and more likely. And I wouldn't be disappointed as a West Ham fan to see that happen. There's no reason for us to push ourselves to that kind of money. It doesn't make sense.
No, I agree. I mean, I've longed to have Lingard back. I think he'd be a great addition. I really, it's such a great impact last time. But I agree. I mean, the money we're talking is a bit ridiculous. And I think, considering the fact he's 29, 30, I think in December as well. And what's just sad about it for me, and I think for a lot of fans, it's just, I appreciate he's out of contract. So yeah, he's going to demand a bit of a higher wage, and that's absolutely fine. He's well within his right. But it's sad that money's the driver here. I would have thought that, like you just touched on, when you talk about the MLS and Saudi Arabia and these things, and they're, he's not quite there yet in his career. He thinks he's got more to offer. Then the money's waiting for you anyway. You know what I mean? Even if you signed a 2 or 3 year deal at West Ham and say for 100 grand a week, you could always be in the back of your mind and think, well, I'll go and get my 250 grand a week in a couple of years when I start packing up the Premier League. So it is sad that that's how it's going down that route. I mean, as you say, things could change, but it does seem like that money's going to be the factor, sadly, at play.
The one other thing that I would say as well is that I don't understand why he has allowed this to go on for so long. He's been out of contract at United now for 3 weeks. He's been a free agent, and he's been touring the world on holiday, taking fancy snaps and whatnot. He's not match fit. He's not been doing a full pre-season. So wherever he goes, he's going to need to get into match condition. And that takes a good month, 6 weeks at the highest level to even be ready to consider playing 90 minutes. And look, the Premier League breaks off in mid-November for the World Cup. So if he really, really does harbour those ambitions of going to that, I would have thought he'd want to be settled well in advance, get a full pre-season under his belt. But
absolutely,
that hasn't happened. So it does make you wonder what the driving factor is. It's unfortunately looking more and more like being sold to the highest bidder, which is unfortunate, because I agree with you. I think in terms of what he could add to West Ham, he's got something about him that we don't have in the squad. He's got that little bit of X factor. He's got that turn of pace on the counter-attack. He offers a slightly different threat from what a Said Benrahma would offer, for example. I think he would play a key role for us, but that's not to say that there aren't other players out there who fit within the wage structure, who make more financial sense, who could offer those kind of traits to the team. It's just about us identifying those players and being able to get a deal over the line, which is seemingly problematic for us, even though I know we've got a few over the line already, which doesn't normally happen, but we are seeing other deals drag on, and that's kind of the way we're used to our business being done, isn't it?
Yeah, we never. I know the Flynn Downs aside, which happened pretty quite quick, which is very unlike West Ham. But you're right; these things do tend to drag out. It is a shame regarding Lingard, and as you say, things could change, and who knows? But at the moment, it's certainly not looking that he's going to be joining us anyway. At the moment, in terms of then who we brought in so far, what's your thoughts on West Ham's business that's been completed?
Well, firstly, Alphonso Areola, I think, was a no-brainer. He was great for us on the whole last year. I fully anticipate he will become our number one goalkeeper long term. I'm not sure it will happen straight away. I think Lucas Fabianski made a mistake on the final day of the season against Brighton, and for me, he hasn't looked as sharp over the last 3-4 months of last season, and I feel like Areola is now in a position to take over. But I think David Moyes is quite loyal to his players, and I think Fabianski is going to have to make a big gaffe before we make that change. But a 5-year deal, Areola is a great goalkeeper. It was smart, and look, it didn't cost us very much. We managed to get his wages down, which were pretty damn high at PSG. The transfer fee was all right. Naif Aguerd, fingers crossed, his injury that he suffered at Rangers is not typical, as bad as it?
Absolutely typical West Ham. Yeah,
it looked horrible on the replay. With a bit of luck, it's ligament damage and nothing more than that. But from what I don't know too much about him, and I wouldn't pretend to say that I've watched an awful lot of him, but having done a bit of research, it looks like he's, quick, which in the Premier League is one thing that you need. He's good in the air, but his recovery pace and his positioning look to be pretty solid. And look, a left-sided centre-back is something that I think we know we needed. Angelo Ogbonna's been brilliant for us for years, but he's 34. He's just come back from an ACL injury. That takes a lot getting over for any footballer, let alone somebody who's coming towards the end of their career. So I think Aguerd was smart business. I think the fee's all right as well. 25, potentially rising to 30. It's an all right figure. As you said, it's just sod's law and bloody typical of us that he's potentially picked up an injury. And Flynn Downs, look, we needed a new Mark Noble, didn't we? We needed someone who understands the club. And all right, he might not be the central midfielder that many people wanted us to bring in, but at this point in time, we need bodies, don't we? Like actual central midfielders, I would have only categorised as Declan Rice and Thomas Soucek. I don't count Pablo, I don't count Manuel Lanzini in that bracket on a Coventry because he doesn't have the experience. I was looking at it like, Christ, we've only got Rice and Soucek. We need Downs. We probably need one more. And we're obviously looking at Amadou Onana from Lille. We're still waiting to hear back on the offer that we've put in. But I think Moyes has recognised that we need more legs. We were bloody tired at the back end of last season, and that's why we dropped off a bit. And had we had more bodies in the squad, I'm pretty confident we would have got top 6 because Man United were handing it to us on a plate, but we were just not in the condition to get it done. But I'm happy with who's come in, but I feel like we need, if we want to be as competitive as we were last year, we need 3 or 4 more, and we have to recognise we got a full season out of Michail Antonio, which was bloody amazing.
I can't believe that happened. I still can't believe that.
Yeah, it's not going to happen again.
I know. Yeah.
So, be it Brozier, be it Scamacca, I don't really care who it is. We need to get another forward in. We need another left back for me. I know that we all know we're looking for one. Yeah. I dare say I feel like we might, if the opportunity presented itself, we might look for another centre back. Now that sounds daft to say that we've got 5 on the books, but we've stalled on letting Issa Diop go. Yes. Because of the Aguerd injury. That's partly because of it now. There's also a little bit of a concern about Kurt Zouma and whether or not his knee is all right from his long-term injury previously. Okay. There's also Ogbonna, who has still got to get back up to scratch. And will he ever be back at his peak? Not sure. Absolutely. So it sounds bizarre to say that we might look at another one. But that's the gut feeling that I've got. And I know that Diop, the main reason that they've not let him go is Fulham didn't quite match the fee that we wanted. But yeah, we're concerned that we might need injury cover. The Zouma one's not too well known, but we know he's had problems with Knox. He had a couple last year. I think that's noticeable, isn't it? He does tend to pick up injuries, Zouma. We've noticed it a few times, even from sort of like doesn't look like much has happened to him, or he's been in quite a gentle challenge, and then suddenly comes out of it quite badly. So there is a little bit of concern, I think, for the fan base over Zouma. Yeah. You mentioned Scamacca. Now, as we've been recording this, it's breaking that West Ham have tabled a £40 million bid for him officially. What's your thoughts on Scamacca? I mean, I can't say I know a lot about him. I've seen clips and done the whole YouTube watching, and which is sometimes a bit misleading, I think, because I've done that with so many players before and then been very disappointed. But Scamacca, what do you think? Is that something you'd like to see the club pursue? So again, he's not somebody that I personally know a lot about, but I've spoken to my colleagues at 90 Min Italy to get the lowdown on whether or not he's a good signing. And as soon as I said to my colleague Alessandro, Scamacca to West Ham, what do you reckon? He just went, really? Okay. Yeah, and I said, really? Like, wouldn't you know what West Ham are like with strikers? We buy players, we make them worse, we sell them for half the price. And he said, no. Yeah, absolutely, that's how we do it. No. He's guaranteed if you play to his strengths, he will score goals. And look, he's been linked to Arsenal. He's been linked to Juventus. He's been linked to PSG. The guy's obviously not a mug. He's playing for Italy now regularly under Roberto Mancini. Scored 16 goals last season in Serie A in a Sassuolo team that's not great. They're not bad, but they're not great by any means. I think he's got potential. He's 23. He's a big bloke. He's powerful. We're a different team now. We might look at this and think he's just another Sebastian Haller type player. And
I
we
keep
didn't
thinking
get.
of Zaza. I just got these horrible memories of Zaza. That was one I got really excited about. Oh, he looks great. And then
Yeah.
I remember once he hit a shot at Man United, I think, and I think it went off for a throw-in.
He was a disaster. But no, I think Scamacca he wouldn't be a disaster. And look, we've said at 90 min for the past week or so, 10 days ago, I can't remember when we last did the story. West Ham had an agreement in principle with Sassuolo. So that doesn't mean that the fee is agreed, doesn't mean that the details were kind of ironed out, but there was an agreement in principle that there was a deal to be done for around 40 million euros. And it was how West Ham would structure that deal, how much money would be paid up front, how much would be performance-related add-ons, how much would be bonuses that are mandatory, how much are performance-related bonuses. I haven't actually been too close to what the latest is today, so it's probably a phone call I'll be making after we come off the call. But I know it's a player we are in for. And the thing with him, he's actually got more experience than Armando Broja. So Broja he's had 1 year at Southampton, was very good for that 1 year and scored a bloody good goal against us because of course he did. But he's only had that one season. He's 20. He's a bit raw. I don't know. I can't see us doing both. I know that
I agree.
It's been floated that we could do both, but I don't see how or why we would. It would stop us from going for something else. I think Scamacca could be the one, personally.
Okay.
But we will see. It appears Chelsea want to play hardball with us over Broja. I think it's posturing, I would say, more than anything else. We know Broja wants the move. He wants to play regularly. He feels like he's ready. He knows he won't get that at Chelsea. He's got Michy Batshuayi to look at as an example there of a player who's just stuck and has got nowhere to go.
Absolutely.
It's just whether or not we're prepared to meet Chelsea's demands. But I don't think they really want to give him to us, to be honest. That's the other thing they would want to do if they had to push come to shove. I think Chelsea would say, "Can we do a loan?" Because that's what they love doing. But there's no benefit for that for us. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Before you go, mate, can I ask what your predictions are? And I'm going to put you on the spot here for next season. Realistically, where do you see West Ham finishing, and can you see any silverware next season?
I think so. I will be disappointed given the business that we've done and the targets that we're lining up if we don't finish top 8 again. Now, last year I predicted us to come 10th in the Premier League, thinking that Europa League would massively take it out of our legs and that we wouldn't be able to sustain it. And then lo and behold, we managed to come 7th and get to the semi-final. So I think we've got as good a chance in the Europa Conference League as we did in the Europa League. I think we can go far in that competition. Yeah. And I do think a top 8 finish is within our reach as well. Cup-wise, I don't know. There's always that dream that we're going to have a cup run and then someone comes along to burst our bubble. So I'm going to say no. My heart's telling me no. My head is saying, please just let us win the FA Cup. I'm still not over. It's been over 15 years now. I'm still not over that Steven Gerrard.
Oh, mate, I can't. Still, I know I can't. Even when I see a clip of it, it really hurts.
I hate it.
And I just don't think I'd love to meet him and just tell him how much I loathe him for that moment.
Thanks for breaking up. Was that the last time I cried at football?
Yeah. I'm still in counting for it, mate. You know what I mean? I still having flashbacks, that moment. Oh, Scaloni with that throw-in. Oh,
don't.
Agony. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and I'm sure everyone will really enjoy watching this. And thank you so much, and we'll hopefully get you back on very soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark. Cheers.
Cheers, Toby. You take care. Bye, mate.
Bye.